Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Year 4 English. I hope you've had a lovely half term, and now we're ready to get back into it. Hopefully it won't be too long now until we're all together in school. Today is going to be, we're going to be looking at identifying frontal adverbial phrases in a sentence and then trying to use them correctly. We're having help with Edith the Adder today as our animal theme. First of all, the most important thing is when an adverb consists of more than one word, it would be known as an adverbial phrase. So in these examples here, you've got in silence, I walked to the line. I made sure I checked the map so I wouldn't get lost. The pot of gold was found at the end of the rainbow. Before next week, I will learn my spellings. Now, in blue, they're highlighted. These are adverbial phrases. They are something that we add to the sentence to give it more detail. Okay, so here, the main part of the sentence, what we call the main clause, I walked to the line. Well, that's kind of it tells you what's happening, but it doesn't tell you how you're doing it. And don't forget, with an adverb, it's normally describing the verb, how you're doing something. Okay, so here we add a little bit of extra information. In silence, I walked to the line. So it just makes your sentence a little bit more interesting, more descriptive, and tells you how you do something. Usually an adverbial phrase can describe where, when, why, or how. You know, those are 4 of our 5 W's from our newspaper articles here. So this sentence, in silence, I walked to the line, that would be a how. It tells you how you walked to the line. This one, I made sure I checked the map so that I wouldn't get lost, would be a why. That tells you why you're checking the map, sorry. The third sentence here, the pot of gold was found at the end of the rainbow. Well, you can clearly see that's a where. It's telling you where the pot of gold would be. And then finally, before next week, I will learn my spellings. Okay, that's a when. That's telling you when you're going to do something. So usually adverbial phrases, whether they're frontal or just general adverbial phrases that are on the end of a sentence, they would normally be a how, a why, a where, or a when. Now the structure of a sentence that uses a frontal adverbial phrase is a little like this. Now I've highlighted them in different colours so it's clear. Okay, the children completed their work. That would be what we call the main clause or a simple sentence. That is the main part of the sentence and it makes sense on its own. So the children completed their work. Now, what we're going to do here is add this frontal adverbial to the sentence to give it a bit more information, to tell you how the children were completing their work. So in this case, without making a sound, the children completed their work. And the really key important part here as well is, and it's a bit difficult to see, but where I've got the cursor there is a comma. That comma will go after the frontal adverbial phrase. So this sentence is a how sentence, how the children are completing their work. They're doing it in silence, they're doing it without making a sound. Okay, your first little task this morning, and it's not something I need you to write down. What I want you to do is to have a look at each of these sentences. Now, each of them has a main clause and an adverbial phrase in it, and it might be at the beginning or it might be at the end of the sentence. You've got to work it out. And what we want you to do is to identify where the main clause is, where the adverbial phrase is, and whether it's a how, where, why, or when sentence. Sorry, a bit of a mind freeze there. Okay, so you've got to decide where the adverbial phrase is and what type of phrase it is. Okay, I'm going to give you a few minutes to have a go at this, probably no more than 5 minutes. Okay, so press pause while you're looking and press play when you're ready to continue. Okay, welcome back. Well, on this screen, it's got the answers here. So we've got the first sentence. With great regret, I didn't do my homework. Okay, so you can see that highlighted in red is the frontal adverbial phrase. It wouldn't make sense on its own. It will only make sense when it's added to the main part of the sentence. And you've got there, with great regret, that tells you it's a how. Okay. Back at the house, I searched for the missing locket. Well, clearly that's a where. That's telling you where the main part of the sentence is taking place. For making cookies, you will need 3 eggs. Okay, so you will need 3 eggs is the main clause, the main part of the sentence. The frontal adverbial is here, for making cookies. That's telling you why you need 3 eggs, because you're going to be making cookies. Sentence 4, after sunset, Sophie went to bed. Okay, so Sophie went to bed is the main clause. After sunset is the frontal adverbial, and it's clearly a when. It's telling you when it's happening. Above my desk, there was a massive cobweb. Okay, frontal adverbial is here. It's telling you where the cobweb was. Okay, so it's a where sentence. Yesterday morning, I went to the chemist. So the main sentence there is I went to the chemist, and it happened yesterday morning. Yesterday morning is the frontal adverbial phrase. That tells you when. And then cautiously, so carefully, they walked through the minefield. That tells you how they walked. It's an adverb that's telling you how they walked. And finally, weekly, the students have a spelling test. So the main part of the sentence is the students have a spelling test. The frontal adverbial phrase tells you when. Okay, first independent task this morning. You can see on the slide here, there are some frontal adverbials in black down the left-hand side here. And down the right-hand side, there are some main clauses, which are in blue. Your job will be to write these sentences out, but I want you to match the frontal adverbial with a main clause that you think help it to make sense. Okay, now if you get this right, they will all be used once, and they will all help the main clause and the frontal adverbial to make sense together. Okay, so I'm going to ask you to do that. I'm probably going to give you about 10 minutes, 10 to 15 minutes. Press pause while you're doing this, and press play when you're ready to come back and listen to the answers. So press pause now. Okay, hopefully you've managed to have a go at this. And these are the answers. Okay, so you can have a look and see if you've done it properly. Carefully, she carried the hot drink. Okay, that's a how, telling you how she carried it. After breakfast, I brushed my teeth, or I brushed my teeth. That tells you when. It's a when sentence, when you brush your teeth. Finally, I reach the destination. Okay, suddenly the lights began to flicker ominously. In the restaurant, they devoured the chips. So that's clearly a where. And finally, every lunchtime, I play with my friends. That would be a when. Okay, so hopefully you've managed to get these in the right places. If you did, they will all make sense. Okay, on the screen here, you can see what I've got there are a range of when, how, and where frontal adverbial phrases, phrases that you can add on to the front of a sentence. And you can see that under the when, we've got every day, during playtime, twice a week, after breakfast, when I go to school. I'm sure you could probably think of some more of your own. Second column is a how. Slowly, rapidly, haphazardly, it's not a word you hear very often, cautiously, and frantically. Now, pretty much this column here, are all adverbs. So they're pretty much words that will tell you how you do something, and they generally, don't always, but generally they end in ly. So it could be, you could even come up with a few more of your own for that column as well, I'm sure. And then where, we've got some suggestions here. Next to my house, on Saturday, at school, outside the restaurant, in the museum. Now, I'm not 100% sure about the on Saturday, because I think that probably belongs over here. but I couldn't change the slide because it was something that I'd copied. So I'm not sure about that one there. All the others are clearly where, frontal adverbials. Now you're going to be using these this morning for your independent task. Your main independent task for the lesson. What I want you to do is to choose 2 of the frontal adverbial from each section and use these to write 2 sentences. Now, Edith at the bottom there is saying, don't forget to use the correct punctuation. Remember, every time you use one of these, you would follow it immediately with a comma before you write the rest of your sentence. I wouldn't use on Saturday, as we said, probably I'd put that into the when column if it was me. So that's what you need to do. You've got 6 sentences to come up with using frontal adverbials. If you're feeling really confident and you are flying through these, at the end, could you maybe pick one or come up with a frontal adverbial for a sentence of your own, but can you come up with a different, a brand new frontal adverbial for each of these sections? So could you come up with a when, a how, and a where that's not on this list? That will prove to me that you've completely understood and got the understanding. If you don't quite get that far, not a problem. Just make sure you complete the 6 sentences. Press pause while you're working. I'm probably thinking you probably need about 20 minutes to do this, at most 25. Press pause while you're working and play when you're ready to come back. Okay, finally for this morning, we've got, for our plenary, a little paragraph on the sheet here, or on the slide here. Now, Edith is asking, is this a good piece of writing? And first of all, I want you to tell me what you can see in every sentence in this piece of writing. So 30 seconds to have a quick look at that. Minute tops. Press pause while you're looking. Press play when you're ready to come back. And remember, the focus this morning has been frontal adverbial phrases. Okay? Press pause now. Okay, welcome back. Well, hopefully you've noticed that every single sentence there has a frontal adverbial phrase. Okay, now if we move on to the next slide, sorry, I gave you a sneak peek there, you can see that they are highlighted in red. In the forest is a where frontal adverbial, isn't it? Up in the trees, again, a where. In the distance, a where. Without wanting, he jumped off and ran towards it. Sorry, without warning, he jumped off and ran towards it. Okay, that's a how, isn't it? Yeah. Rapidly, again, how, he raced through the trees. And after a few minutes, he reached the destination. That would be a when. So you've got in there a range of frontal adverbials. Now, these are really good. But as Edith is mentioning at the bottom there, frontal adverbials possibly have been overused in this paragraph because every single sentence has a frontal adverbial. Now, realistically, in your writing, you wouldn't do that, not in every single sentence. Okay. Now, what I want to do is to just show you how we could change this up a little bit and just give you a little bit of, just give it a little bit of variation in your sentences, really. So, deep in the forest, the boy sat eating an apple. So we had it to begin with, in the forest. Now we've got deep in the forest. Gives it a bit more, make it a bit more interesting. Birds chirped noisily up in the trees above him. Now before we had up in the trees, there were birds chirping. What this has happened, this is what we've done here, is actually switched the frontal adverbial to the end of the sentence, so it's just an adverbial phrase now. Okay, we haven't done much else with the sentence, but it does just change it up a little bit. In the distance, he could hear a strange, unfamiliar sound, beckoning him closer into the thick of the trees. Now that, in the distance, he could hear a strange, unfamiliar sound. What we've done here is really put some extra detail in there. Use some of your expanded noun phrases, strange and unfamiliar. Okay, hasn't really altered too much the frontal adverbial part of it, just made it a bit more interesting. Without warning, he jumped up and ran rapidly towards it. Okay. This one we had, without warning, he jumped up and ran towards it. So actually all we've done here is added some extra detail, an extra adverb to tell you how he ran. He raced through the trees, his heart pounding with anticipation. We had this one, rapidly he raced through the trees. Okay, so again, it's adding extra information to just make your writing a little more interesting. And after a few minutes, he reached the destination. That's actually staying the same. Nothing wrong with that. Okay, what you've got here with this sentence is just the way it's just been mixed up a little bit, just varied slightly. And what it does mean is that you don't have frontal adverbial in every single sentence. And what we're going to be trying to teach you over the next few weeks is to be selective, to choose when you are going to be using frontal adverbials, to make your writing, therefore, a little more interesting. Okay, thanks for listening. I hope you have a really good rest of your Monday, and I'll speak to you tomorrow.